Hi everybody, welcome to this session all about how to find a safe, experienced and impactful tutor. I'm delighted to collaborate with the 11 Plus journey regarding this topic. It's something I feel very passionately about, and in our numerous phone conversations, Sabra and I have discussed frequently about how can we be regulated in an unregulated industry. And I think the thing that we've really come to the conclusion is that it's about everybody doing their due diligence, parents, tutors, everyone, to make sure that we're providing not only good quality tuition, but safe and effective tutors as well. Just a caveat before I start. I will obviously talk about what I do myself and what Lion Education, which is my company, do. However, I'm not remotely saying that we are the only people who are providing safe, effective and experienced and impactful tutors. There is a wealth of fantastic tutoring companies and individual tutors out there, many of whom interact regularly on the 11 Plus Journey group. So I know that all of those tutors are also following this same process, the same ethos that I'm going to be talking about today. So yes, I will refer obviously to my own experience and my own company, but I wouldn't want anybody to think that I'm only suggesting that we are the people to go with, because that's not the case at all. So without further ado, let's get started. So I've separated this presentation into 4 distinct sections regarding the sort of process of finding a tutor and then working with a tutor. So you can see there are 4 parts to this: first impressions, the initial contact, arranging a session, and then ongoing sessions. At the end of the session, I will remind you again, but if you want to ask any additional questions or you want me to offer more information about anything I discussed today, please do get in touch with me and I'll be more than happy to address any additional questions you have. So let's start with the first impressions. Now, I know that a lot of parents post asking for either recommendations for tutors or asking for tutors to share their services with them. Now, I think what's really important here is to make sure that tutors are not jumping on posts where there's a request for parental recommendations, because obviously at that point, that wouldn't be the right thing for the tutor to be doing. Likewise, I think it's worth spotting for those tutors that offered a generic response that they give to everybody, or whether or not they're actually responding to you. A good tutor will recognise whether they can offer exactly what you need, and that's what you should see in that initial post. This next point I think is really important, and having spoken to various parents that I work with, they have been regularly bombarded with private messages when they've posted in Facebook groups. Now, personally, I would never private message any parent unless they'd requested me to do so. In fact, as lots of other tutors do, my initial comment would say, feel free to message me. So you're allowing the parent to do that. Similarly, is the tutor active in Facebook groups? There are some fantastic advocates for education, particularly in the 11 plus arena, who frequently, regularly offer the most fantastic advice and suggestions. Those are the tutors that you want to be working with, because those are the tutors who are actually willing to provide support, guidance and advice without just wanting to secure a tutoring job, but actually are engaged and involved in education. The next thing, now I know not all tutors do. I am aware that not everybody does, but certainly a tutoring company should have some formal way of you seeing their services, whether that be via a website or a Facebook page. Obviously, that demonstrates the professionalism of their company. Now, I appreciate individual tutors may not be in a position where they either need or can afford a website, so I would bear that in mind. But at the same time, I think that they should be able to demonstrate some kind of obvious evidence that they are a professional working tutor. And that for me would be via a website, a Facebook page, an email address, or a phone number. I think those tutors that post WhatsApp me on, for example, only, might raise a few concerns for me personally if I was a parent. So I would just look for that professionalism. Got it right that time. Okay, next, the initial contact. So when you first start to communicate with the tutor, one of the things I absolutely urge you to do is to check that the tutor has a DBS. Most tutoring companies will have DBS checks as a standard part of their safer recruitment processes. And I know that lots of the companies that I've referenced before do that, including obviously my own company as well. So the enhanced element of the DBS is super important. A basic DBS, somebody can actually get a basic DBS check on themselves, whereas an enhanced DBS check needs to be completed by either an employer or an umbrella company. That therefore makes sure that there's much more rigorous checks going on than if somebody was providing the information themselves. The DBS is not foolproof. It doesn't provide security 100%, but it does demonstrate that the person that's tutoring your child has not been stopped from working with young people or with vulnerable people. And that's obviously really important in terms of safeguarding. That leads me on to the next thing. Now, this, I think, is probably slightly controversial because personally, I won't have any tutors working with me that haven't completed safeguarding training. And if they haven't within the last year, then they're offered, and it's mandatory for them to do that. I feel personally that anybody who's working with young people or anyone that has the potential to be vulnerable, that it's really important that they are aware of their own safeguarding responsibilities. Thankfully, significant safeguarding issues within private tuition are rare. Thank goodness for that. But we need to ensure as tutors that we know what to do should there ever be any incidents that occur. So having that safeguarding training protects the tutor themselves, gives them the knowledge, and makes sure that they are doing everything possible to protect your child. The next thing, now I've put in brackets there or equivalent because I think that's really important, because I know there are tutors out there who are exceptional tutors but are tutoring in something where they don't have a degree. So I wouldn't want to say, oh, you have to have a degree in the subject, but I think you need the equivalent either subject knowledge or experience in order to demonstrate that you can do that subject to the level that is required. Ask the tutor, and please feel free, ask the tutor as many questions as you want about their experience. They may well not want to share their degree certificates with you, but they should. I did my degree like 20 years ago, and I could still tell you all the units that I did, the essays that I did, and so on. So if they don't want to share that to protect their own privacy, I think that's reasonable, but they should be able to talk to you about their knowledge and experience confidently in order to demonstrate what they can bring to the tuition with your child. In the same way, does the tutor have experience of tutoring for the specific school, exam board and age range? Obviously here we're focusing solely on the entrance exams. So a tutor should be able to say, yes, actually, I've tutored GL, I've tutored CEM, I've tutored for specific schools for that specific age range, and show and demonstrate that knowledge. Sometimes every tutor's got to start somewhere. So perhaps a tutor will say to you that they haven't yet, but they have researched and they can show you that research and that knowledge that they've acquired. So you may want to give a tutor a chance who hasn't tutored for that particular exam board before, for instance, but just make sure the tutor's being honest about where they're starting from and their knowledge base. I think this one is really important for me because I've heard some horror stories over my time as a tutor where parents have, in good faith, paid for lessons up front, maybe a half term's worth of lessons, and then they've never heard from that tutor again, obviously in a complete scam situation. I find that horrifying that scamming is going on within education. It's my passion area, teaching, tutoring, education. So to hear that's going on, I find really quite heartbreaking, but unfortunately it does happen. And I think a way to ensure your protection as a parent is to meet. And you can see I've put that in inverted commas there, because it may be that if you're doing online lessons, that will be a virtual meet or an over the phone meet. But I think it's not unreasonable for you to be able to speak to the person that's going to be working with your child before they meet your child, or indeed at the same time. I know some tutors offer free initial consultations. We do at Lion Education. I know some tutors offer a free trial lesson as well. That's not something we do, but we do offer a first session as an initial session, but it is a paid session. So again, talk to the tutor, find out what they do. I think if a tutor is not willing to either speak to you on the phone for free or meet you via Zoom for free, briefly, by all means, it would raise concerns for me, and I'm sure it would for you, because you're likely to be expected to pay in advance, and you of course want to see who it is that you're paying that money to and who's going to be working with your child, the most precious thing for you. Finally, just in terms of data and GDPR, where's your data going to be stored? So any information that you provide, where is that going to be stored? Is that going to be secure? And who's going to have access to that? And just make sure that you're happy with everything that the tutor says to you in regards to the protection of your data. In the first session, and this first part of this question, I'm sure you will have asked earlier on or seen on the website, Facebook page, etc. I'm certainly not going to suggest what is or isn't the right fee per hour, because different tutors have different views on this in terms of their own experience, their knowledge, but also their ethos within education. Personally, my own ethos is that I want to try and make my tutoring available, and by my, I mean my company's tutoring, available for as many people as possible. So because I'm so experienced as an English teacher, I could charge considerably more than I do, but I choose not to, so that hopefully more people can access me as a tutor. But that's my personal choice. I'm certainly not suggesting that anyone who charges higher or lower is wrong in any way, because that's obviously a personal choice for the tutor. What I would, however, say is that it's really important that you ask what that fee includes. Does it include just the planning and the teaching of the lesson, or does it also include a kind of complete price of the planning, the teaching, the assessment, and the feedback that's provided to you? Just ask the question just to make sure that you know exactly kind of essentially what you're getting for your money. The next thing is all about the kind of actually, how is this lesson going to be delivered? What's the tutor going to include? How are they going to teach the sessions? Are they going to use PowerPoint presentations? Are they going to use bit paper or Jamboard or all these other fancy things that can now be used? Similarly, face-to-face, what are they going to do? I would say, and again, this is perhaps slightly controversial and certainly my own personal view, that I would be a little concerned if all the tutor was doing is working through some of those fabulous books that are out there, the CGP, the Bond, the Galore Park books, which are amazing. But I do feel that a tutor should bring something new and different that you can't just access yourself by purchasing from Amazon. Obviously, if your time constraints are such that you need somebody to do that with your child, that's absolutely fine. But I think if you're looking for tuition, then that tutor should be bringing original bespoke planning rather than just going through textbooks. Again, slightly controversial, my own personal view on education. So apologies if that offends or concerns anyone. I'm just sharing with you what I feel provides the best tutoring. A good tutor and an experienced tutor should easily be able to assess your child within the first few sessions, indeed probably in the first session, depending on what the focus is. If I was being asked to tutor comprehension skills, I would start with a lesson that provides me with a range of tasks for the child to complete so that I can see exactly where the strengths are and where the areas to focus on are. Similarly, if I was doing a series of lessons over 3 lessons, I would look at reading, writing, verbal reasoning, if writing was part of their particular exam, of course. And then I would see very clearly what the strengths are and what the target areas are. So ask the tutor, how are you going to do that? How are you going to spot in the first few sessions what my child needs? And then similarly, obviously, how are you going to address that? This, I think, is really important because, again, I've heard of these kind of horror stories where parents, where a tutor hasn't provided any feedback to a parent for a long period of time, and then it's become quite clear that progress isn't being made. Again, a good tutor should be willing to provide some feedback to you. That doesn't mean a lengthy, long report, but a brief email or a quick phone call or a text message. I personally just fill in quite a brief but a clear feedback form each week for one-to-one sessions so that the parent knows exactly what we've covered, exactly what their child has done well and anything that we need to focus on. I also include a homework task on there for the child to complete between the sessions. So different people do things in different ways, but there should be some communication of feedback to you. Again, just be mindful of checking in terms of the feedback, will that incur any extra costs for you, just so that you know exactly what you'll be paying each week. The last thing on this in terms of arranging the first lesson is thinking about whether the session will be recorded. Some tutors do, some don't. Record sessions, and obviously it also depends on whether it's one-to-one or group and so on. If the lessons are going to be recorded, again, just ask the question of where they're going to be stored and who has access to them. You're perfectly entitled to say that you're not comfortable with recordings if that's how you feel. A tutor may not want to proceed with the tutoring based on that, but don't feel that you have to do anything that you're not comfortable with for your child. Last section, part 4, the ongoing sessions. So this obviously would have come up as part of talking about the fee, but will the tutor provide ongoing independent learning tasks? Will that work be marked even? And is there any additional fee? Again, I know I keep mentioning this, but I do think it's really important so that you know exactly what you're getting for that fee that you're paying. Personally, I feel that independent learning between sessions is really quite crucial in order to ensure that progress is continuing to be made, especially if we're talking about year 5, where the 11+ exams are coming along so quickly. And the level of that independent learning should be high. It should be linked to the session that's just been completed. I would be concerned if it was just something random that didn't seem to link with anything that's been studied before. Independent learning should be a consolidation and a way of the student showing what they can do when the tutor isn't there, because essentially that's going to be the situation when they're in the exam. So personally, I feel it's something that's really important to offer as a tutor. Saying that, I also recognise that students have a significant amount of other homework and other activities and so on. So personally, I also offer it as an optional thing to not provide any more pressure on the children and indeed you guys as parents. This, I think, is absolutely crucial. How's the tutor going to track progress? Any good experienced tutor should easily have be able to say to you exactly where your child is at. In teaching, when I was teaching in schools, there were always 3 questions that we asked. So what's the child's target grade, essentially? Where do they need to be? Where are they now? And what do they need to do to get there? So I always work on that philosophy with my tutoring as well. So what do they need to do to get into their chosen school or schools, if they're applying to a couple of different ones as options? Where are they at now, which goes back to that being able to assess them, and then what do they need to do to get there? And that then is the focus of the targets. So actually, what do I need to, as the tutor, work on with that child in order to help them make further progress and reach where they need to be? And how will those areas be focused on in sessions? Would I do a whole lesson on a particular question type, for example, or am I going to feed them in because the child finds them difficult? So there's lots of different options, and it's all very much bespoke and individualized, but a tutor should be able to say to you about your child, this is what I'm going to do to help them, so that you know exactly how progress is going to be made. On a longer term basis, how will the tutor keep in contact with you? So obviously various options: email, Facebook Messenger, text messages, WhatsApp, etc. So how is that relationship going to be able to be open to communicating regularly? For me, I feel that the tutoring relationship is very much about myself, the student and the parent working collaboratively. So I have quite regular contact with the parents I work with. They share other bits and pieces about what they've been doing in the week, as well as the tuition, which is lovely. But they also know that they can contact me if they have any queries about homework tasks, if they need to change lessons, if they want me to focus on something particular that's cropped up in school that their child found difficult. Personally, I usually use email and text. I just find that easier, but I'm kind of pretty flexible and open to different options of communication, because I just think it's so important to ensure that the parents are part of this tutoring relationship. The last thing, and kind of will, in a sense, cover quite a lot of what we've talked about, is does the tutor have terms and conditions available for their tutoring services? And are you happy with them? And in particular, things like the cancellation policy. So, for example, if your child was ill, what's the policy on that? If you need to go on holiday, which we kind of all do at the moment, then what's the policy on that? So just make sure that you're happy with everything before you kind of sign on the dotted line, as it were, and continue the sessions onwards. And finally, have you agreed when the tutoring will end? So if you're working towards a particular exam, does the tutor know when that exam will take place? They should do, if they're familiar with the schools, etc. Or if you only want a short term, actually, I just want a half term's worth or a term's worth. Just share that with the tutor and make sure that you know that the tutor is going to be available for the length of time that you need to. So all of these conversations are really important to have to ensure a productive tutoring arrangement moving forwards. The last thing that I've got to say, just before I share a little bit about me and my company, is this. There's the old quote, isn't there? It takes a village to raise a child. And this quote, if it takes a village to raise a child, it takes a village to support that child's parent, I think is kind of really important based on the topic of this. I think as a tutor, you are temporarily invited into that village of people supporting children. And with a great recognition of just how vital the parents in that village are, and the wider family and teachers and everything else. And as a tutor, you play a little brief part in that life of the child to help them make progress. It's my personal, and again, perhaps slightly controversial view, that if you are not experienced enough, if you don't recognize the privilege of being part of that village, of being part of the learning journey of that child, I don't believe you should be there. So as I say, slightly controversial, perhaps. There may be people that disagree. I hope not, because I hope that all tutors do recognise the privilege it is, the honour it is to work with children and to support them to move forward. You know, the difference between a child going to one school or the other, or passing an exam or not, can be really significant for them and can change the trajectory of their life. So it is a privilege and it is an honour and it is a very important role. And any tutor that you talk to should demonstrate that their understanding of the importance of that role, that they are going to be responsible in a sense to support your child. They can't ensure for certain that they pass every exam, because that comes down to lots of other things as well as the tutor, but that they take their part responsibly, and that they do everything they can to provide the best possible tuition and education for your child. Just a little bit about me. I didn't want to do this at the start because I thought actually people probably just wanted to hear about the key points about tuition. But for anyone who doesn't know, I'm the director of Lion Education, and we are a small group of like-minded tutors, just very much passionate about education, focused on English and maths predominantly, for grammar and independent school entrance exams. You can see the details there if anyone wants to contact me about anything related to what I've talked about today, but also if anyone wants to contact me regarding anything else about entrance exams and so on, I'd be very happy to hear from you. I hope that the session today has been beneficial, has provided you with a kind of tick list, a checklist, if you like, of the things to look for when you're searching for a tutor. And I hope that you find the right tutor for your child, and that tutor recognises how lucky they are to work with your little ones. Have a great day.